It is the end of August. The hottest part of the summer is behind you now, and this was supposed to be the week. All season, you waited for this week. You walk out to your garden in the early morning with an empty basket on your arm, the dew still on the grass, and you go to the row of tomato plants you put in back in May. You remember the day you planted them. You remember how good it felt, the little plants in their plastic cups, dark green, full of promise. You dug the holes. You watered them in. You told yourself, this year I will have so many tomatoes I will not know what to do with them all, and now you stand in front of them. The plants are thin. The stems are no thicker than a pencil. The leaves down low have gone yellow and curled, and a few of them have black spots spreading like ink. You count the tomatoes. 1, 2, a green one up top that may or may not make it. A small one on the side that has a sunken brown rot on its bottom, gone before it ever ripened. You lift a branch and look underneath, hoping there is a cluster hiding there that you missed. There is not. You have been to this garden every day for 3 months. You have watered. You have weeded. You drove to the garden store in June, and you stood in that aisle and you bought the bag of fertilizer, the blue crystals, the one the young fellow said was best. And you spread it just like the back of the bag told you. $18 for the bag. You bought it twice. And this is what you have. A basket that is still empty. A handful of tomatoes off 6 plants. Enough for 2 sandwiches and nothing left to can. And then you look over the fence. Your neighbor, the older woman 2 houses down, who never seems to fuss over her garden at all, who you have never once seen out there with a bag of anything. Her tomato plants are taller than she is. They have grown up over the top of their cages and folded back down over themselves into a wall of green. And hanging off of them, heavy, pulling the branches down toward the dirt, are tomatoes, clusters of them, red ones, ripe ones, more than she could eat in a month, more than she could give away. You can see them from your own yard, and you have never once seen her buy a thing. Now, I want you to sit with this for a moment. There is no luck in growing tomatoes. There never was. That woman 2 houses down is not lucky. She is not blessed with a green thumb that you were born without. She did not get better plants than you did. She very likely started from the same little cups at the same store. The difference between her wall of red fruit and your basket of disappointment is not luck, and it is not money, because she spent less than you did. She spent nothing. The difference is one thing she did at the very beginning, in May, on the day she planted, that you did not do. One thing. And she did it for free. Every Amish woman in this country once knew this one thing. My grandmother knew it. My wife's grandmother knew it. They tripled their tomato harvest off the same seed, the same dirt, and the same rain that everybody else had. And they did it without spending a single dollar on a single bag of anything. And the whole of it, the secret, and the handful of small free habits that go with it. Any person watching this can learn in the next 15 minutes and never grow a sad, spindly tomato plant again for the rest of your life. I am Elias Yoder. I am Amish, and I farm here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. We grow most of what we eat. We always have. My wife Esther grew up with her hands in the soil right alongside her mother, and her mother learned it from her mother before her, going back further than anybody bothered to write down. The garden was not a hobby in those homes. The garden was supper. If the tomatoes did not come in, you did without, and so the women of those families could not afford to grow a poor crop, and over the long years they worked out exactly how to grow the richest crop the land would give. And the secret I am going to share with you today is the one Esther's grandmother called the most important thing she ever taught anybody. She used to say, a tomato will give you 3 times what you ask of it, but only if you ask it the right way. Most folks ask it wrong. They ask it wrong on the very first day, and after that, there is nothing the poor plant can do to fix what was already decided in the ground. So here is what I am going to give you. First, the one forbidden secret itself, the thing the old folks did at planting time that changes everything. And then I am going to give you the short list of free habits that go with it. The small things that turn a good plant into a wall of fruit. The trench, The stripping, the burying, the blanket, the deep drink, the pinch, and the saving of the seed. By the end of this, you will know the whole of it, and you will never spend another dollar in the fertilizer aisle as long as you live. One thing before I begin. The old ways I share on this channel, there is far more of it than I can ever fit into one video. So I gathered the whole of it together into a book over at my website. That is there for the folks who want the long version, the full year of it, season by season. I will not mention it again here. If you want it, you know where to look. Now let me show you the secret. Here is the secret. And I am going to tell it to you plain, because it is so simple that when you hear it, you may think it cannot possibly be the thing. But it is the thing. It is the whole thing. When you plant a tomato, you must bury almost the entire plant, not the little bit at the bottom, not the root ball with 2 inches of stem above the soil the way the fellow at the store showed you and the way the picture on the tag shows you. You must dig deep, lay that plant down nearly to its top, and bury the stem, most of the stem, 2/3 of it, sometimes 3/4 of it, under the ground. That is the secret. Bury the stem. Now let me tell you why. Because once you understand the why, you will never plant a tomato the old wrong way again, and you will understand why it triples your harvest. A tomato is not like other plants. A tomato is a vine, and a tomato vine has a power that almost no other garden plant has. Every single one of those tiny hairs you can see on the stem, those little fuzzy hairs all up and down the stalk, every one of them is a root waiting to happen. They are called adventitious roots. What it means in plain words is this: anywhere you bury that stem, anywhere it touches moist soil, the plant will grow brand new roots straight out of the stalk, not a few, hundreds of them, all along the buried length. So picture 2 plants side by side, your neighbor's plant and yours. You both started with the same little seedling, the same small root ball the size of your fist. You planted yours the way the tag says, root ball in, 2 inches of stem above the dirt, the rest of the plant standing tall in the air. Your plant has the roots it came with, that little fist of roots. That is all it will ever have to drink with, to eat with, to hold itself up with. For the whole summer, that small fist of roots has to feed the entire plant. Your neighbor laid her plant down in a deep trench and buried that whole long stem, and within 2 weeks, every inch of that buried stem sprouted roots. By July, her plant does not have a fist of roots, it has an arm of roots, a great spreading mass of root reaching far out and far down through the soil, 3 times the roots, 4 times the roots of your poor standing plant. And here is the part that matters. A tomato plant can only grow as much fruit as its roots can feed. The fruit you see hanging on the vine is a direct report of how much root is hidden under the ground. More root, more water pulled up, more goodness pulled out of the plain soil, more sugar sent into more fruit. That is why she does not need fertilizer. She is not feeding the plant from a bag. She built a plant that feeds itself because it has the root system of 3 plants packed into one. You cannot out-fertilize a small root system. You can pour every blue crystal in that store onto your spindly plant, and it will not matter, because that little fist of roots cannot take it all up anyway. Most of what you bought washed straight down past the roots and into the groundwater. You paid $18 to feed the dirt below the dirt. The roots are everything, and you build the roots on planting day by burying the stem. That is the forbidden secret. Now let me give you the habits that go with it, because the secret is the engine, but these next things are the wheels. When you go to plant, do not dig a deep, narrow hole and try to stuff a tall plant down into it standing straight up. That fights the plant. Instead, dig a trench, a long, shallow trench, like a little grave dug on its side, maybe 6 inches deep and 1.5 feet long, running along your row. Then take your seedling and strip it, and I will say more about the stripping in a moment, and lay it down in that trench on its side, almost lying flat, with just the very top cluster of leaves left sticking up out of the ground at one end. Cover the rest. Cover the whole stem with soil and press it down gently with your hands. Here is the why. The richest, warmest, most alive soil in your whole garden is the top 6 inches. Down deep, it is cold and dead and packed hard. By laying the plant sideways in a shallow trench, instead of standing it up in a deep hole, you keep all of those new roots up in that warm living layer where the goodness is, instead of sending them down into the cold, dead clay. The plant gets the length of buried stem, all those new roots, and it gets to keep them in the best dirt you have, sideways and shallow beats deep and standing every time. The little top that sticks up will turn and reach for the sun within a day or two, all on its own. Do not worry about it lying crooked. By the end of the week, it will be standing up straight and proud, as if it had grown that way from a seed. Before you lay that plant in the trench, you must strip it. Take the plant in your hand and pull off every leaf and every branch along the part of the stem that is going to be buried. Leave only the top cluster, the 4 or 5 leaves at the very tip that will stick up above the ground. Strip the rest clean. Do not be gentle and do not be timid about it. Pinch them off right at the stem. Folks see this and they wince. It looks like you are hurting the plant, tearing off most of its leaves. You are not. You are helping it more than almost anything else you will do all season. 2 reasons. First, every place where you pull off a leaf, you leave a small wound on the stem, and that wound is exactly where the plant will throw out its strongest new roots. So stripping the stem does not just clear the way for burying, it actually multiplies the rooting. You are giving the plant dozens of fresh places to grow roots from. Second, a young transplant has a small root system and too many leaves. Those leaves lose water to the air faster than the little roots can replace it, which is why your store-bought plants often droop and sulk for a week after planting. Strip the leaves, bury the stem, and now the plant has very few leaves to support and a huge length of stem about to become roots. It does not sulk. It does not droop. It goes straight to work building roots. And within 10 days it is growing faster than anything you have ever seen. Strip it bare. Bury it deep. Trust the plant. Now, this next one is where the no fertilizer truly comes alive, and it costs you nothing because it is made of the things you already throw away. Before you lay the plant down, scratch a little hollow in the very bottom of the trench, beneath where the stem will lie, and put down a handful of the things from your own kitchen and yard that the soil loves: crushed eggshells from the morning's breakfast, the grounds left over from the coffee pot, a banana peel torn into pieces, a few handfuls of old fallen leaves from last autumn broken up. If you keep chickens, a small scoop of the old bedding, well aged. That is all. Cover it with a thin layer of plain soil so the roots do not sit right against it. Then lay your plant down on top. Now hear me carefully, because this is the heart of it. This is not fertilizer. Fertilizer is a quick blue salt that feeds the plant for 2 weeks and then is gone and washed away, and the plant is hungry again and you must buy more. What you have just buried is different. It is slow food for the soil itself. As the summer warms, the worms and the tiny life in the ground come up to that buried handful and break it down slow over weeks and months, releasing a little goodness at a time, exactly as the plant needs it, right at the level where all those new roots are growing. You are not feeding the plant. You are feeding the living soil, and the living soil feeds the plant. That is the whole difference between the Amish garden and the store garden. They feed the plant, we feed the ground, and let the ground do the feeding the way God arranged it. A handful of scraps you would have thrown in the bin. That is your fertilizer for the whole year, and it costs you nothing. Before I give you the last of it, and the last few are the ones almost nobody knows, the ones that take a strong plant and turn it into that wall of red fruit hanging over the fence, let me stop for just a moment. Every home leaks. Not just water from a tap. A home leaks money in a dozen quiet ways all year long. The food that spoils before you eat it, the heat that slips out the windows, the things bought new that could have been mended, The garden that gives you a basket of disappointment after you spent $40 trying to save it. Most folks never see the leaks because each one is small, but they add up to a great deal over a year. Inside our Amish home saving system, Esther and I sit with folks and help them find those leaks, one at a time, and close them up the old way, the way our families have done for generations on very little money. The link for that is down in the description if you would like to walk through it with us. Now, the last 3 habits, and the second one of these is the single thing most people get wrong all summer long. Once your plant is in and the trench is filled and watered, you must put a blanket over the soil. We call it mulch. Take the things you have for free, grass clippings from the mowing, dried out so they do not mat, or straw, or chopped leaves, or even plain cardboard with a little soil on top, and lay it thick over the whole bed around your plants, 3 inches, 4 inches. Cover every bit of bare dirt so you cannot see the ground anymore. The only thing poking through is the plant. Why does this triple the work the secret started? 3 reasons, and they all matter. First, that blanket holds the water in the soil. Bare dirt in August dries to dust by noon, and your roots go thirsty between waterings. Under a thick blanket, the soil stays cool and damp for days. Second, the blanket smothers the weeds, so the weeds are not stealing water and food from your tomatoes' roots. Every drop and every crumb of goodness goes to your plant instead of to the weeds you would otherwise be pulling all summer. Third, and this is the quiet one, that blanket slowly rots into the soil from the bottom up, year after year, feeding the ground all over again, the same way the buried scraps do. The old folks never left bare soil. Bare soil is soil that is dying. Covered soil is soil that is alive. Blanket your beds. Here is the one almost everybody gets wrong, and getting it wrong undoes half the good of the secret. Watering. Most folks water their tomatoes a little bit every day. A quick sprinkle in the evening, just enough to wet the top of the soil. This is the worst thing you can do, and I will tell you exactly why. When you wet only the top inch of soil every day, you teach the roots to stay up at the top, because that is where the water is. You raise a lazy, shallow-rooted plant, the very opposite of the deep, far-reaching root system the secret built for you. You spend all that effort burying the stem to grow deep roots, and then you call those roots back up to the surface with your little daily sprinkle. Do the opposite. Water deep and water seldom. Once or twice a week, give that plant a long, slow, deep drink, enough that the water sinks down a foot or more into the ground. Then leave it alone. Let the top dry out. When the top is dry and the only water left is down deep, the roots chase it. They drive down, deep and wide, hunting for that buried water, building an even greater root system as they go. A deep-watered tomato grows roots like a tree. A daily sprinkled tomato grows roots like a blade of grass, deep and seldom. Let it reach, and always water the soil, never the leaves. Wet leaves in the evening are how the black spot and the blight get started, that very disease you saw creeping up the bottom of your sad plants. Keep the leaves dry, water the ground. Now your plant is roaring. It is throwing out stems in every direction, and here you must do one small thing each week that doubles the fruit on the strong stems you keep. You must pinch. Look in the crook of the plant, the V where a branch meets the main stem. You will often find a third little shoot growing right out of that crook, out of the armpit of the plant. We call it a sucker. Left alone, every one of those suckers grows into a whole new stem, and that stem grows its own suckers. And before long, your plant is a great tangled bush, putting all its strength into making more and more leafy stems, and very little of its strength into fruit. Pinch them out. Once a week, walk the plants and pinch off the little suckers in the armpits while they are small. Just snap them with your fingers. Keep the main stems and let those grow, but take out the suckers. What happens is this. Instead of spending its strength on endless new greenery, the plant pours all of that strength into the stems you kept and into the fruit on them. The clusters grow bigger, the The tomatoes grow larger and ripen faster because more sun and air reach them. A pinched plant is an open plant, and an open plant is a healthy, heavy-bearing plant. Do not let it run wild. Guide it. A little pinch each week, all season long. And here is the last one, the one that makes this whole thing free not just this year but forever, and the one the seed companies would rather you never learned. At the end of the season, when you have your best plant, the strongest one, the one that gave the most fruit, the one that shrugged off the disease that took the others, take a few of its finest ripe tomatoes and save the seed. Scoop the seeds out into a jar with a little water, let it sit on the counter for a few days until it ferments and the good seeds sink to the bottom, then rinse them and dry them on a paper and put them away for winter in a cool, dry place. Next May, you plant your own seed. And here is the quiet wonder of it. The seed you saved came from the one plant out of all of yours that did the best in your soil, your weather, your garden. So every year you save seed, you are slowly breeding a tomato that is suited to your exact patch of ground, getting a little tougher and a little more productive every single season. Esther's family has been saving the same line of tomato seed for longer than anyone can remember, handed down jar to jar, mother to daughter. You cannot buy that seed in any store at any price because it does not exist anywhere but in that family's garden. That is what saving seed gives you, a tomato that is yours, that gets better every year, and that you will never have to buy again. Now I want to take a moment because this is where it all comes together. Look at what we have walked through. The secret: bury the stem. Lay the plant down deep in a trench and bury most of it so the whole length of stem becomes roots, and the roots become 3 plants worth of feeding power packed into one, and the 7 habits that go with it. The trench: dig it shallow and sideways in the warm, living topsoil. The stripping: pull off the lower leaves before planting, so every wound becomes a root. The buried scraps: a free handful of eggshell and grounds and peel beneath the stem, slow food for the soil, not the plant. The blanket: thick mulch over every bit of bare ground to hold the water, smother the weeds, and feed the soil as it rots. The deep drink: water long and seldom and at the ground, never a daily sprinkle, never on the leaves, so the roots drive down deep. The pinch: take out the suckers each week so the plant's strength goes into fruit and not into endless greenery. And the saving of the seed: keep the seed of your best plant and grow a tomato that is yours forever and gets better every year. That is the whole of it. Not one of those things costs you a single dollar. Every one of them is something the old folks did with their hands and the things they already had. Do them, and next August you will not be standing in front of a thin plant counting 2 tomatoes into an empty basket. You will be standing in front of a wall of red fruit, pulling the branches down with more than your family can eat and plenty left for the jars. And now I want you to understand why this knowledge went quiet, why your mother may not have taught it to you, and her mother may not have taught it to her. There is no money in teaching folks how to grow their own food for free. None. Think it through. The garden store does not profit from a person who buries a handful of eggshells and never needs a bag of fertilizer again. The fertilizer companies do not profit from a tomato plant that feeds itself off its own deep roots and the living soil. The seed company does not profit from a woman who saves her own seed in a jar every fall and never buys a packet again. Every single piece of what I just taught you takes $1 out of somebody's pocket who is used to having it, so nobody runs a commercial telling you to bury the stem. The picture on the plant tag shows it standing up tall with 2 inches of soil, because that grows a small, hungry plant that needs the bag of food they are selling right beside it. They are not lying to you with words. They are just letting you keep doing the thing that keeps you coming back. And slowly, over the years, the free way, the way that needed nobody and nothing but a person's own 2 hands and the scraps from their own kitchen, stopped being passed down. The grandmother who knew it passed on, and the knowledge passed with her, and her daughter, raised on bags and packets, never learned it, And so a whole country now stands in the garden aisle in June, holding a bag of blue crystals, wondering why the neighbor's tomatoes are taller than the fence. You do not have to wonder anymore. The plant always had this power in it. The vine was always ready to grow 100 roots out of its own buried stem and feed itself 3 times over. Nobody took that power away. They just stopped telling you it was there. So here is what I want you to do, and you can do it this very spring, or even now if your season still has time in it. When you put in your tomatoes, do not plant a single one the old way. Dig the trench. Strip the stem bare, but for the top. Lay down a free handful of scraps. Bury the plant deep on its side. Blanket the ground thick. Water it long and deep and seldom, never on the leaves. Pinch the suckers each week, and at season's end, save the seed of your best one. Then wait. Let the summer do its quiet work underground where you cannot see it. And come August, walk out to that row with an empty basket the way you always do. And this time you will not be able to carry it all in one trip. Cut into the first ripe one right there in the garden. Eat it warm off the vine, the juice running down. And then bring a basket of them in and set it on the table in front of your family. More tomatoes than they have ever seen come off your garden, and watch their faces. Once they have tasted what your own ground can give when you ask it the right way, they will never let you go back to the old way again. And the children will come out and dig the trenches with you next spring and strip the stems with their own little hands. That is how the knowledge comes back. That is how it gets handed down again, the way it was always meant to be. Tell me in the comments below which of these you had never heard of before. The burying of the stem, the stripping, the deep watering, the saving of the seed. And if your grandmother or your mother had her own quiet trick for the tomato patch, a thing she buried, a thing she said, a day she always planted by, share it down below for the rest of us. The little family secrets are exactly the kind of thing that disappears forever when nobody writes them down. I read every single one. Next time, since we have been speaking of feeding the soil instead of the plant, I am going to show you the old way my people make the black gold that makes a garden roar. The compost pile. Not the slow, sad heap that sits in the corner doing nothing for 3 years, but the proper Amish way to build a pile that turns kitchen scraps and barn straw into rich black earth in a single season, for free, that will feed every bed you own. It is the natural next step after today. Until then, dig the trench, bury the stem, feed the soil and not the plant, and remember that the good Lord built into every tomato vine the power to grow itself 100 roots and feed a family 3 times over. It was always there, waiting in the stem. You only had to know to bury it.